all care about something. But where would you expect to go to find the most deliberate display of care? Would you go to a state-of-the-art healthcare facility? Or perhaps a beautiful, well-cared-for garden? Or maybe a museum dedicated to the preservation and care of great works of art? We all care about something, right? But I think that we could find extraordinary examples of care if we go right to the back parking lot, next to the garbage, inside the recycle dumpster. Yeah. You see, I think that the recycle dumpster is much more than just the place that you throw out your old cardboard, paper, plastic, and aluminum. I believe the recycle dumpster is a place to be reverenced. It's a container full of wisdom, ancient as the Tao, unexpected leadership, and acts of extraordinary care. Because recycling is an act of caring, and I really care about that. So in addition to my work at City Year, an education-focused nonprofit fueled by national service, about 4 years ago I decided to start a business, and I chose recycle collecting. And as it is with any small business, especially very early on, you've got to be really hands-on. I was okay with that. I remember one time I was way out in the country in this backwoods lot, and I'm standing waist deep in this recycled dumpster. Now, I remember this time in particular because it had rained the night before. Yeah. And now it was a steamy hot 100 degrees. And I'm standing in this recycled dumpster with all of this wet cardboard and some spiders and some frogs and an assortment of other little critters. And I was humiliated. Really, where was my dignity? Where was my pride? There was nobody around for miles. But I remember looking up to those pine trees, and I lamented dramatically. Gail, what in the earth are you doing this for? And then I heard my own voice answer the question. I am doing this because people really care. And that is the moment that everything shifted. What I discovered as a recycle collector is that something kind of mysterious happens in the workplace environment if you have someone who's really passionate about recycling, right? The people who would contact us, they weren't the senior leaders of the business. They also weren't the directors of facilities, grounds, or maintenance. From what I could tell, there was no work-related reason that some of these individuals should be contacting us at all. But yet and still, they're the ones calling around, asking for information, even requesting a quote. So that got my attention. I decided to ask them about it. I would ask them all, and they all said the same thing. Oh, I think recycling is really important, and I think we should be recycling here. So there you have it. And the majority of the time, these companies would suddenly just transform and institute this whole process for recycle collection. It was actually kind of fascinating. I mean, when you think about what these individuals were able to accomplish, right? Their willingness to sort of take up this cause and then push it through this maze of complacency, and they would take it all the way up to the top. Now, they weren't elected or appointed. Right? They did not ask for permission to lead. They felt authorized to take action simply because they cared. And because they cared so deeply, they were able to powerfully lead, and their leadership inspired others along the way. I mean, it certainly inspired me. So that I began to wonder, okay, so is this just about recycling, or is something else happening here? I decided to take a closer look, and this is what I saw. If the company had no recycle program in place, these were often the individuals who would just sort of take the initiative, step up to the plate, and do the recycling themselves. And they would take this action even though there was no financial reward or incentive to do so. And they would take this action even though their actions often went unacknowledged. They couldn't tell you which tree they had helped to save or where this aluminum can would end up 5 years from now. No, they took the action because they cared and they believed that this action would have a great impact on the world, and they would take this action over and over again. So let's be clear, I am not talking about an occasional random act of kindness. I am talking about a daily and deliberate display of care. But here's the thing. Most of us would agree that recycling is good for the environment, yes?
Yes.
Yes. But not everybody does it. And not everyone cares deeply about it. So I began to wonder, what makes any of us care deeply about anything at all? Why do we volunteer our time at a shelter? Why do we give our money to support our favorite charity? Why do we take time to tutor that struggling child? Why do we ask others to care and give of their time, their talent, and their treasure? Soren Kierkegaard, the existentialist philosopher, theologian, said, "That which is truly great is accessible to all." So what could be more accessible to all than a plastic bottle, a sheet of paper? But I can tell you, when I was standing in that recycle dumpster, I just certainly didn't feel like I was standing in the middle of greatness. And there have been times when I have been standing in my office at my nonprofit and have asked myself that same question, Gail, what in the world are you doing this for? And I knew that this recycled dumpster had something to do with this question. There must be an answer. And so I literally searched for months and months trying to find it. And then one day I found it. Written on the pages of that ancient Chinese philosophy, the Tao Te Ching. The Tao, written in what, 6th century BC? Yet still one of the most translated works of literature in the world. 3 little sentences on the page, and I was perfectly clear. The Tao is an empty vessel. It is used but never filled. Oh, the unfathomable source of 10,000 things. I could almost see the green recycle logo, arrow, chasing arrows, like hovering above the page. The Tao is an empty vessel. Okay, so if it's empty, that means it has been completely and totally reduced. Used, but never filled. Well, if it's never filled, certainly it can be reused. Oh, the unfathomable source of 10,000 things. A source of 10,000 different things, that's a very good definition for what it means to recycle. Right? So you see, this is reduce, reuse, recycle, and this is us. When we strip away doubt and fear and complacency, like all of that garbage that weighs us down, then we are reduced to our highest calling, and that's our care. And our care is very much like that vessel, right? It can be filled, but it is never all used up. When we lead, when we take action from that place, that is when we can create things that we never dreamed were possible. So that's my theory, and I call it the Tao of reduce, reuse, recycle. Is it about recycling? Yes, it is. But it's also about leadership and people who really care. People like Sally. Sally had worked for the same insurance company for 25 years. Every day she would go into work, right, make sure everybody had what they needed to start their day, and then at night, Sally would go around to all the offices, collect the papers and bottles and cans, and take them home to recycle them. And my friend Patrick Patrick was a retired lieutenant colonel who spent most of his time now volunteering at his church. Now, Patrick created one of the most strategic recycling programs I had ever seen. He got together some like-minded members from the congregation, and they created this sort of a zero-waste policy because to them, recycling was stewardship of the earth, and stewardship of the earth was their ministry. And I met Bill and Helen at a college, and Cheryl at a little elementary school. Now, these educators believed that recycling was much more than something that should be taught in the classroom. It was a core value. But they said, how can we expect our children, our future leaders, to take on these values if we don't recycle ourselves? So you see, Patrick and Helen and Bill, they all realized that this was something they didn't just care about, they felt personally responsible for, right? They could no more walk away from this issue than you or I could walk away from a friend in need. So when I met them, when I really began to understand what they had to go through to make this happen, right, I became an extension of their care. And so you see, it was their care that kept me in the recycle dumpster. This is the Tao of reduce, reuse, recycling. This is what it means to be your caring and take action for good. But recycling is just part of the story, and here's what I mean. Okay, so let's say that the recycle movement wins. Yay! And we have this glorious planet that we're going to pass on to our future generations. But what if at the same time, what we're handing our future generations is a world where caring is at risk? Because we have squandered and wasted opportunities to take action for good. Impossible? Did you ever think we'd be living at a time when 46% of our beautiful rivers and lakes would be too polluted to swim or fish? Or that the rate of homelessness would continue to increase? Or that every second an acre of forest land is chopped down and restored? And that our children, 50%, are still living below the poverty line? If the way we treat each other is but a mirror reflection of the way we treat the earth, are we at risk of becoming a careless society? Albert Schweitzer said, if a man loses reverence for any part of life, he has lost reverence for all of life. But we're here this afternoon because we all care about something. So what's next? How about this? We see the recycle dumpster as a place of reverence. Because the recycle dumpster can be used as a powerful affirmation. The recycle dumpster reminds me that my caring creates the world in which I want to live. So what about you? What about our donors? What do we care about? Because that's our aluminum. And like aluminum, the possibilities are endless. Thank you for caring, and thank you for recycling.